On mic today, we have DJ Fielding, the star of many, many iterations of Power Rangers. And I normally I get a little bit apprehensive over Skype chats because it's a little off-putting to just talk to a giant head. But in your case, it actually works for me.
Yeah, sure. I'm kind of familiar with the whole environment, so yeah.
So you've really embraced the fandom and your role as Zordon, and it's just become a part of your internet presence.
Yeah, I mean, I was away from the show for a long time, and when I got reintroduced to it, it kind of took me by surprise how much the character meant to a lot of people. So I try to honor that and to connect with them as much as possible because the show does mean a lot to a lot of people. So I just try to keep up that. So
it really does. I was kind of surprised when the show first started getting a bigger presence in conventions around, I guess it was probably 2010, 2011 when it started. You know, the actors started getting parts at conventions, and the people just flocked to it. It was like practically as big as Star Trek or Star Wars or any of the other big draws. It's just as big as that these days, and it was just people who were, I call it doubling back on the fandom, is when people who were into it as kids now have kids who can be into it and they can get into it together.
Yeah, and their kids are having kids, so we're starting to get into that third generation of fandom. So yeah, I mean it's really sort of a gift that keeps on giving. So we're happy to go out when they ask us to and chat about things, and it's just been really wonderful the whole time.
And speaking of chatting, I mean, following you on social media, you really seem to have a generally an appreciation for not getting into drama and just enjoying works for what they are. And I do find that to be a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, I mean, I have been guilty a couple of times of, I wouldn't call them spats, but I mean, I do have some strong opinions about some things, and but I generally try to keep it very drama-free because there's already so much drama out in the world, and I'd much rather concentrate on stuff that moves us forward, that keeps things positive, and I think we need that nowadays. So
I can agree with that. I can agree with that a great deal. Yeah. In fact, I had some chats with some people who were never really, for example, just take Power Rangers into the show, and they say, well, why would you watch it? And I say, well, number one, I like giant monster smashing things. It's kind of a personal preference of mine. But also the stories were fairly harmless in the grand scheme of things. It was just something you could let the kids watch to blow off a little bit of steam. They were silly, but they were harmless. And sometimes that's enough. Sometimes just letting somebody have a little silly release valve can be great.
Yeah, and the show was unique in the fact that it was diverse right from the get-go, and it wasn't anything that they really talked about. It was just accepted, and they moved forward with it. And I think that underlying unconscious, unspoken message really, reaches out to a wide swath of people. So I think that's another reason why it's lasted so long and why it continues to last.
Mm-hmm. And another really good message, not only were the core team members diverse ethnically and they were diverse in terms of how they acted, but even the bullies who could have been the enemies, quote unquote, were portrayed as being basically good at heart, maybe a little mixed up, but not the worst people in the world. And yeah, that's a good message too.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about Bulk and Skull, those two are the heart and soul of Power Rangers. I mean,
yes.
They have one of the greatest arcs in a television series. I mean, they start off as these bumbling tools, and by the end of it, they have embraced their own inner hero and rise up, and they are the good guys, and that's awesome. And Paul Schreier and Jason Narvi are two of the most wonderful people you'll ever get a chance to meet. So if you get a chance,
good times.
Yeah. Good guys.
I was at a convention with them and Catherine Sutherland a couple of years back. was there before the show opened. I was working there actually, and I got there just as they had grabbed this giant roll of pink duct tape and were defacing Catherine Sutherland's giant picture on the wall with a pirate beard and an eye patch. And I just looked at them and said, you know, this is exactly what your characters would have done on the show, right? And they said, yeah. I'm like, okay, just as long as we're clear on that, continue, proceed. Yeah. Don't let me stop you.
Yeah.
It's just a genuine camaraderie among the actors on the show is what I'm feeling.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't know what it is about the casting process, but the show always seems to laser in on people that are just really, really good at heart and get along with everybody, and it's just wonderful to be a part of that little family. So
you can definitely get the sense whenever you get everybody on a panel or even just behind a booth, it's a genuine back and forth. It's a real personalities coming through.
Yeah.
But speaking of genuine, you became an author too, didn't you?
I am an author, yes. I have had a number of my short stories published. I have a novel coming out later this year, hopefully before October. And that's sort of where my career is now. I am writing every day, and that's really where my passion is right now. So I'm really enjoying that part of my journey. So
can you share any of what you're working on or what's inspiring you right now?
Sure. The novel that I have coming out is called Glims. It's a paranormal urban fantasy and concerns my main character, whose name is Lincoln Bright, who can see and hear things that have been left behind by those people that have passed away. And those things are, he doesn't call them ghosts. Most people might think of them in that way, but they're not. They're in his parlance, they're called glims, and they're not something you want to mess around with. And if they stick around too long, then they start opening the doorways for other nasty things to crawl through. So it's his job to sort of like try to stop them before that happens.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
And the urban fantasy is an up and coming genre. It doesn't get enough love, I don't think.
Yeah, a lot of it is concerns itself with magicians and that side of the supernatural. This one is a little bit more. It doesn't have a lot to do with magic. It has a lot to do with the paranormal, the ghost-like entities, the negative emotions that we carry with us that sometimes get left behind to continue to wreak havoc through other people's lives.
Wow, so it's almost like a manifestation of karma or
yeah, kinda. I mean, I think there's some element to that in it. Yeah.
Okay. Very interesting. Very interesting. So is that what you kind of like reading on your own when you get the chance? You taken from?
I have a wide area. I have a lot of interest in different subjects, but I grew up reading Edgar Rice Burroughs and Doc Savage and The Spider and a lot of pulp novels, Conan the Barbarian, Princess of Mars, that kind of stuff. And then from that I segued into comic books and graphic novels, and from there I moved on to what they call men's adventure tales with The Executioner and Mac Bolan and Remo Williams and that kind of thing. And then that led me into darker territory along the lines of Stephen King and the occult supernatural novels that really sort of like captured the mid to late 70s, early 80s era. And of course, Stephen King was so prolific and was writing so much. And when I was a late teen, young adult, that I just devoured that stuff as soon as it came out. And then, moved on from there to Anne Rice and just read as much as I can of various subjects. And so I think a lot of that stuff influences the stuff that I like to write about, because a lot of my short stories are they're very pulpy, they're very action oriented, adventure oriented, and what's interesting is I don't like scary movies. I won't go see slasher movies. I won't go see what they call horror movies or something like that, simply because I am not a fan of the jump scare. I think that's
cheap.
It's not necessarily cheap, but it makes me jump, and I don't like that feeling. I know a lot of people like it. It's like riding a roller coaster. It's that, flirting with fear, death kind of thing. But anytime there's a jump scare in a movie, and even it doesn't have to be a horror movie, it could be any sort of movie where a cat jumps out of a window or whatever. I mean, it always catches me off guard, and I hate that. So that's the number one reason why I don't go see scary movies. We were at a convention a couple of weeks ago, and Austin St. John was like, he wanted to go see Scary Stories They Tell in the Dark, which is a movie that's out now. And he's like, you got to come with me. You got to come with me. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to go, because I'm not going to sit there in the theater and jump out of my chair when something happens. I'm not going to do that. But I do enjoy writing about stuff that's spooky, stuff that could actually happen, that tries to explain weird things that happen in the world that we all sort of experience on one level or another.
Well, it's interesting. I'm really, really glad this conversation went in the direction of Stephen King, because when you were describing your work, knowing nothing about it, I was like, man, that sounds like something that Stephen King would eat up with a spoon.
Yeah.
So
well,
I'm go ahead.
Hopefully, I mean, my editor really likes it. I really like it. The few people that I've had the fortunate pleasure of they get a chance to read it have all really enjoyed it. So I hope that when it gets out into public hands, they enjoy it too. And to be compared to somebody like that would be wonderful if something like that happened. I mean, I don't think I'm at that level, but who knows? Maybe one day.
Maybe.
Even though he started when he was so young, just sending stuff out, and I didn't get brave enough to do that until my late 40s. So.
Well, it's not easy, the rejection letters, they do sting.
Well, as an actor, you learn really quickly to develop quite a thick skin, and it was either Stephen King or somebody else who said that every pink rejection slip I get is a badge of honor. And that's just, what that tells me is that somebody read it and somebody had an opinion about it. It may not be, one of the opinion that I wanted it to be, but that tells you that you're at least on the right track. And no matter how many rejection slips you get, eventually somebody's going to say, yeah, I like this. Let's go with it. And so I looked at every rejection that I ever got about something as just a stepping stone to making it better than what it was before. Getting a chance to rework an idea or to rewrite a section of a story or whatever, make it better, to make it the best that it can. So that's how I look at rejection anyway. I mean, I tweeted earlier today that I get very tired of the whole competition sort of framework that a lot of media and pop culture stuff gets referenced into. You see it all the time. There's is Darkseid better than Thanos, or is the Red Ranger better than the Green Ranger, and just this sort of idea that everything has to be a head-to-head competition, winner and a loser type of mentality. And I get really tired of that because not everything has to be a competition. When I was acting and I would audition for parts, I wasn't competing with other actors for the role. I was competing with whatever idea the director or the producer or the stage director had in mind for that particular character. And if I didn't look the way that they had imagined, if I didn't move in a certain way, then that was up to them. I had no control over that. So the only thing I could do, the only person I could really compete with was myself, to learn to be better, to understand the script better, to make a different choice every time I auditioned. So it wasn't that I was competing against 1,500 other guys. It was just me trying to do the best that I can with the tools that I was given to open up that director's eye and say, oh, I can see that. And so that's how I always look at it.
But yeah, and that's a really good point. That was one of my favorite posts of yours over the past couple of weeks. Is just not everything has to be a competition. It's even so silly that people try to compare two things that really have nothing to do with each other and were made by completely different people and completely different mindsets. Just let everything be what it is.
Well, I mean, we're such social creatures, and we're drawn towards controversy, and anything that pushes somebody's button, especially in today's world where everything is instantaneous information and it's in your face all the time, it's easy to get a rise out of somebody. And with all the clickbait article titles and everything like that, there always seems to be yet just one other thing that I need to be ticked off about because the way a title was written, or the way they have images, posted, this versus that. And everybody has an opinion about these things. And what I always find sort of silly about it is that you're arguing and getting, you're raising your blood pressure over something that's completely fictional. It doesn't matter in the real world. It's like, but people can get very passionate about, their fandoms and their likes and their dislikes. And I guess that, that's part of what makes the world go around. So,
yeah. I mean, it's understandable to an extent that, you get passionate about it because you like it, because you invest yourself in it, and you like to know what every item in Batman's utility belt, and you want to know what the powers of every Zord are, and that's all great. But at the end of the day, when you say who would win, Kermit the Frog or Darth Vader, the answer is going to be whoever the writers need to win to tell the story.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
It's not going to be any more complicated than that.
Yeah. Whatever serves the story best, that's the way it's going to work out. So.
Yeah, I don't quite get the concept of, we have to come up with the actual answer because, like you said, it's totally fictional and it's really meant for fun in some respect or another.
Yeah, but there are so many people out there with like these really hardcore, strong opinions about this would happen this way because of this, because of this, because of this. And any sort of knock against that really is, they take it as a personal attack because it is personal to them. And, that they've based some aspect of their worldview on that strong opinion. And when you start chipping away at it or knocking at it, then they get very angry or anguished about it. And then you're dealing with a whole different ball of wax. So.
And to be fair, it doesn't always have to fall into the realm of fiction. People get into counterfactuals historically with almost the same amount of passion, and it's pointless for almost the exact same reason.
Yeah, I follow a number of historians on Twitter, and to see the back and forth that's happening now about some people who are, wanting to rewrite history and stuff, it's fascinating to see how strongly some people will hold to their illusions or delusions, or because they want the world to be a certain way. And dealing with truth and dealing with reality is not comfortable. And I think there are so many people that would rather be comfortable than to suffer through any amount of discomfort or pain. And if you don't learn to deal with pain, if you don't learn to deal with some level of discomfort, then you're going to be in for a very hard road. And I think there are a lot of adults out there who are just now learning that lesson and are not happy about it.
Yeah. And I believe it was George Takei was at a convention once speaking about various facets of history, and he made the excellent point that I will remember this for the rest of my life. He's like, if you can acknowledge the mistakes you've made, you can take pride in who you are. The two become a package deal. And those weren't his exact words, but that was the message.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are so afraid of being wrong that they will go to great lengths to remain, in their view, in the right, even though they are very wrong. And they're so afraid of admitting that they damage relationships, they damage, their personal lives, the lives of their relatives and so forth and so on, because of this misguided notion that you can't be wrong. And if you can't be wrong, I mean, how do you grow? I mean, you have to learn to make a mistake. You have to, I mean, heck, going back to pop culture, I mean, that's a big element of the story of Batman in Batman Begins. Why do we fall? So we can get back up. And I think a lot of people forget that. And or they only view it in a very narrow lane, and so I mean the wonderful thing about what I'm involved in as far as writing and as far as being a part of this surreal sort of pop culture world is that you get to see how it touches on a lot of different things. It's not just Power Rangers. Because you have to know a lot of other things if you want to understand what Power Rangers is all about. And the way that things ripple outward, the way, the big spider web that we all are connected to, it's fascinating to just, follow some of those threads and see where they go and what you learn and what you can discover. It's great.
That's a really good way to put it, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I say, there's no shame in being wrong. It's how we grow, and people are not made perfect. And that was one of the first few things I learned as a kid, and I thought that was the same for everybody, but I guess not.
I mean, when I think about the character of Zordon, or when you think about the show, I mean, we kind of joke around on stage at conventions that Power Rangers is it's rated G with extra cheese. It's this sort of, it's this schlocky sort of could never happen in the real world kind of thing. But I mean, I think there are some really great archetypes that still exist in the framework of this kids' television show. The fact that Zordon is unique in his mentor capabilities, and the fact that he cannot physically help the Rangers at any point. He can't leave the power chamber. He can't, jump in the middle of the fight to help them out. He can't pick them up off the ground when they fall down. The only thing he can do is to deliver information that they might need, or they might want, and to tell them continually that I believe in you. I know that you can do this. It's a great parental message for anybody who's struggling with a problem and who feels that they're in it by themselves. If they had somebody, if they had their own personal big floating head in a room somewhere that they could go chat to, and somebody who would tell them, I believe in you, I know you can do this. I think that would, benefit a lot of people. So I think it's really interesting that they made certain choices, mostly out of expediency, because the episodes were filmed very quickly and the storylines were thrown together very quickly. But I think they were pulling together some really unique elements to create this show, and they still hold up on some level. And that, I think that's why a lot of fans have a lot of questions about the behind the scenes stuff of what is Zordon's actual backstory? How did he get trapped in the tube and all that stuff, which we were never given. I was never given any information other than the fact that Zordon was a 10,000-year-old wizard trapped in a time warp. Go. And that was all the information we were given. So, but I do think that it's a lot more layered than a lot of people give it credit for.
Yeah. I mean, thinking back to, I love the movie, by the way. The movie was, for me, the peak of the series is all, and honestly, I kind of left it not too long after that because I didn't think it would ever get better than that. But at the beginning, when Zordon is taken from the chamber and you see him there hurt, that is a moment where I think a lot of kids probably get the idea of, oh, wait, mommy and daddy can get hurt too. That is, it's a lesson that you don't want to learn, but everybody has to learn at some point. That the people that look out for you are vulnerable themselves.
Yeah, yeah, very true.
Well, hey, how about I let you go because I know you have a lot to do, but
Sure.
why don't I just make sure I get my show notes down here? Where can somebody find you if they want to keep tabs on you and check out your writing?
Sure. I'm on Twitter at David J. Fielding. You can find me on Instagram at DJFielding_Zordon. I also have my Facebook page. You can just do a search for Zordon and I'll pop up there. I also have an author page on Amazon. If you do a search for David J. Fielding on Amazon, my page pop up. And that's where all of my writing is actually being hosted right now. So you can find it there. I think that's about it.
Okay. Well, all that's going to be in the show notes on my website, and links will be at the end of this episode on both the audio and video versions.
Awesome.
So I want to thank you again so much for being here. This is a true pleasure of a chat, and I would hope that we can do it again sometime.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night.